Hello, everybody. Welcome to the developer sessions at EGX 2017. This is the penultimate session. I'm afraid for the people watching online, this is the final session you'll be able to see because we have a top secret orchestral performance coming up next. I'm Bertie, a writer for Eurogamer.net. Do read the website, it's lovely. On stage with me, I have two lovely people, two lovely actors, and they're here to talk about the mysterious world of voice acting in video games. Jay Britton and Amelia Tyler, hello.
Hello.
Incidentally, we will have time for questions. You guys will get a chance to ask questions, so do have a think. We'll plop a microphone on a stand in the middle of the aisle here, so don't be shy. Have a think. Amelia and Jay, how long have you been voice acting in games, and which are your most recognizable roles?
You first.
Oh, thanks. So I've been voicing specifically in games maybe 2.5 to 3 years. Most notably, that one, actually. Oh, it's just gone. Elite Dangerous Horizons, in which I play a number of roles. But that's probably the most well-known one, is the wonderful world of Elite.
And I've been voicing technically since I was 5, so 30 years
What,
now.
you did games when you were 5?
No, I did all sorts of other voicing.
Okay.
But games, I only broke into about 2 years ago now. So it's been pretty recent. I've gamed since I was a kid, but
What
really
were you
wanted
voicing at 5 years old? I'm intrigued now.
Dreadful radio commercials.
Any that we'd recognize?
No.
Okay. You're just saying that so we don't miss
And
the
most recognised titles, I was in Elite with Jay. In fact, we were the first 2 voices to ever be discovered audio logs in Elite Dangerous.
Fantastic. So who are your characters in Elite?
The story of the Formidine Rift, if you go and find the Zurara, I am the guy who is dying and leaving logs.
He's always dying.
I always die in space. For anyone who finds out what games I've been in, I'm basically Sean Bean of space. Any space game, I will die. But I played...
Spoilers for Sean Bean.
Sorry, yeah, sorry, Sean Bean fans.
In everything
everything I'm in. If you hear my voice, no, but that character is going to die. Yes, but I was the guy on the Zurara leaving his logs as he died.
Little snippet there.
Horribly.
And who are you, Amelia, in Elite?
Mine's kind of trickier to do. I mean, we've both done other voices in Elite as well, but I played a character called Rebecca Weston who'd been in the books and the lore for a while, and she's very, very old. So I can't really do it like this, but I have to push my cheeks, and she's sort of like this. She doesn't really approve of anything that's going on. She thinks it's all a waste of time.
Fantastic. So you were telling me just now that you guys are both in Divinity Original Sin 2. Very good game. Do play it. But you play a crazy amount of roles.
It's a few, yeah. I think 34 for me.
What?
And 25 for me, but one particularly significant one.
How do you keep the voices different? Is that a thing where you're like, oh no, that sounds too like the last character? I need to do like, oh, I'll be old lady now, like young girl.
Blind panic?
Blind panic, yeah. A lot of the time, it's a case of, because usually it's very quick in the studio. So I get booked for 4 hours, and you turn up, and there'll just be a long list of characters in front, and it'll be, right, we've got this guy, dog, go.
Okay, go.
Okay. Oh, my dog was this guy. He's very friendly, very dopey. But you just kind of, for me personally, I have like a stable of characters who are like, here's my 60 voices that I've got in the bank.
What's can we have a few of those? Can we have an example of a couple of those?
Dave the Bread.
Well, Dave the Bread is basically dog, but a little bit more astute. And then so to get dog, I just made him a bit dumber. And then you've got my favorite one is like, I call him Disney Dad. Because everything's just so great, man. I'm a Disney, I got my kids, I love life. So you can take him, and then if you need to make him, you make him gruffer now. Now he's this guy. I hate Disney, god damn it. So you kind of, I have my stable, and you go, here's the character. You look at the script is usually your kind of go-to that gives you, as much as you can, the context of the character, a little bit of their personality, and then just very quickly go through the Rolodex of what you could put together that's going to fit that.
Yeah, it's kind of like alchemy or kind of chemistry with existing voices. So you're like, okay, so like that one that I did that day, but a little bit older and a bit more cross, and she really needs the loo. Go, and that's how it happens.
Do you have any particular favourites?
Oh, that's interesting. All of them.
I just like anyone who doesn't care.
Yeah.
Can just keep down there.
Don't care. Northern's always great fun. Anything like Scottish. I quite like doing anything Scottish. That's always great if you can get that in somewhere. Anything American. Like creature ones are fun as well.
Oh yeah.
Can you give us an example of a creature?
Oh, who did I do? There's quite a few animals that I do in this, and I think one of them is the eagle featherfall. So it's kind of you have to go like. You don't want to go like full Iago from Aladdin or Gilbert Gottfried, but you kind of gotta put a thing on him. He's got a little bit of a croak, and then you got to fit like, okay, an eagle's gonna have like Gah! Sounds. So somewhere in your speech,
they're always funny.
They
were great for Divinity Original Sin 2 when they went, okay, and now we just need some noises. So like I played a hen at one point, and he was just like, we need...
You know,
okay,
I've got to ask you to do a hen impression.
Oh,
now.
okay. Henny was like, all right, do you want some of my eggs? Oh, she was very friendly. And she ate omelettes. She likes omelettes.
Wow,
like,
cannibal.
Cannibal chicken, which is a bit weird. But at the end of all the written lines, they go, okay, we need some just like general noises of... So you'd be sat in a booth with somebody that you've known for several years, just going... like, absolutely no shame. If anybody wants to get into voice acting, first thing you need to do is just absolutely get rid of any ego whatsoever, because you're going to look like an idiot 99% of the time.
And in case you think we're making any of this up, literally my first line for Featherfall the Eagle was brackets, noise, close brackets. That's it.
What was the noise?
That's it. You have any noise you can pick from.
At least you
okay,
got that,
go.
though. I got woman
That's
in
true.
outhouse who you never meet because she's eaten some bad stew. And now she can't leave. So I had general straining noises.
Yeah, I've not heard this.
Have you not seen
I've
that
not
one?
heard Outhouse Woman.
Like, oh, Lucian, help me. Oh, jeez. Oh. Just like lots of dreadful, pained, heaving noises. And you look up at the end of it and go, is that enough? And there's just somebody creased up on the other side of the glass, just like, I stopped taking about 5 minutes ago.
Where do the voices come from? Is there a procedure for creating a voice, or do they just pop into your hair? Or where does inspiration come from?
It totally depends, doesn't it? Like some of them, it depends on the writing. It depends who you're working with. It just depends if you slept well that night. It really does depend. Like Malady in Divinity Original Sin 2 was just, the second I read the script, I was like, I know what I want her to sound like, and I really hope they agree with me, because it was just this demon purr.
Can you give us an example?
You don't want to meet Malady, darling. You're not ready.
Wowzers.
No, really. You should probably leave.
Well, I mean, I could. But,
we'll just do more voices for a while.
Was doing voices in games, how did you come around to it? Or was it something that you always wanted to do?
For me, yes. Or even not games specifically, but I always wanted to do voices since I was a kid. In terms of like where I find voices, it's mainly they live in my head. Which is disconcerting, but now it's kind of useful. As a kid, I would be walking around my house just having a conversation between two characters in my head as I trundled down the stairs.
You never told me that.
No, yeah, many voices
reason.
live in here. It's bizarre. Shh, quiet. But I stupidly, or not, I guess, but I went into an IT career for 13-odd years.
Which has stood you in good stead, because Jay has this amazing sort of high-tech cupboard studio in his... I'm doing it a disservice here. It's probably fantastic. I haven't been in it.
It's nice, yeah.
So you can record voices remotely, which must be a massive boon.
Yeah, it is, especially now. And again, anyone that wants to look into getting into voice acting, a home studio at this point is pretty much essential. And what that allows me to do is I can work with a lot of smaller devs or lower budget devs who can't afford to go out to a big audio production house and go, well, look, I've got a soundproof studio at the bottom of my garden. You can dial in, direct me, and we can record that way. So yeah, it has stood me in good stead that I can plug things in. And I even did the network wiring myself because they'd saved a lot of money.
Such a show-off.
Because I'm a nerd.
Anyway, I interrupted. So then how did you come into voice acting? What was your first?
My first ever voice acting gig was a corporate for Fox Technologies, which is exactly as interesting as it sounds. But I just started doing it on part-time and got to a point where I went, right, enough of the day job, left, and then kind of didn't look back since. And games was something I knew I would want to do.
So did you have theatrical training?
Yes and no. I haven't been to theatre school or drama school. I've always been a performer, so at school and through uni, and I did a lot of musical theatre actually after I left. Sorry, I never went to uni. College. I left college and I did musical theatre. But in essence, no, I don't have a certificate where I can go, yes, I know how to act. It's just something I've always done, I guess. And that's part of the appeal of games. Especially in games now, the writing is so good and the characters are so wonderful, especially in something like Divinity. They make our job a lot easier when you look at the script and go, yeah, I can get that character like that.
Yeah, completely.
So yes, I've trailed off and gone off on a tangent. I can't even remember what you're asking me.
Tangents are great.
Tangents are good.
Amelia, how did you end up in doing voices for video games?
Oh, voicing in general, I got into because I had a lisp as a child, so my mum sent me to her drama teacher to get rid of it, and she went, she's kind of good at this, she should carry on. And then she couldn't get a babysitter one day when she had to go and record a commercial, and the rest is history. Games, I had to fight really, really hard to get into because I had the acting background, I had stage and screen and voice, but I just couldn't find that in. But then once I booked my first one, it kind of snowballed and people started recommending, or I've been incredibly lucky, let's put it that way. I'm not sure I could figure out quite why it happened the way it did.
How did the roles come along? Do they come through agents, or is it off your own back?
It's a mix, especially in current climes. Yeah, it comes from agents. A lot of the time, dare I say, my slightly preferred way to work is when you get a relationship with the devs themselves. And a lot, once you've worked on one, a dev will recommend you to another. But a lot of it as well, especially when you're starting to establish yourself or is trying to establish a career in games, is the hustle. You have to get out there and go and meet devs and build relationships with devs. And actually be interested in your industry that you want to work in, build those relationships and have a genuine interest in the games that they're making. And then, then people want to work with you and you book this game and that game and so on and so forth. It's a real, I think I figured out something like, across 40-something titles that I've done now, about 10%, maybe slightly more, are from an agent. The rest is me working directly with a developer, which is a really interesting turn from what it used to have been.
Yeah, this is pretty much the same for me. My agent can get feet in the bigger doors, but the vast majority of what I do is just through meeting people at conventions like this and going, your game looks awesome, give me a shout if you ever need anybody, and then just leaving it. And that's what happened with Forgotten Anne, actually.
Which will be on
the floor
somewhere
today. You should play it.
It's out there. So what's a typical day of voice acting like? Is it is it a picnic with a bunch of lovey-dovey, schmoozing each other? What's the reality of a day of voice acting?
Wake up, coffee, some more coffee. It really is one day to the next, no idea. And you get random days as well, which are just beautiful, where you think of how am I going to explain this day when I get home. Generally, though, it's a case of get up. You might have some corporates on the books. You might have a commercial to do. It really is different from day to day. In fact, for Divinity, I had got up one day and I knew Amelia was in recording and I was doing some corporates at home, a bit of an audiobook, and my agent calls me at 12 and goes, "Can you be in London?" "Yeah, of course." "When?" "This afternoon." "Oh, okay, yes." And then, bang, you're out the door. That's why I have my go bag. has my iPad and lots of films on it. And so there really is no typical day. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely the same. No 2 days are the same. That's kind of why I love it. But you have to have people around you that understand that you will occasionally miss a birthday or a wedding or...
Funeral.
I haven't missed a funeral yet.
Don't. It's not recommended.
And
I would miss your funeral for the right game.
Oh, thanks.
But I'd like to think I'd have your blessing.
What's it like when you're actually at the studio? What's the process like? What are you typically asked to do? How do they ask you to do it? What's the actual work like?
Usually you kind of turn up and it's all shaky hands, go to the toilet, get a glass of water, and then you sit in the booth. More often than not, you won't get the script ahead of time. You're sight reading. Maybe you will have got it the night before, but more often than not, it's completely sight read. And you ask the director what it is that they're thinking of for this character, what kind of more to get into their brain than what they should sound like. And you try a couple of lines out, and they go, "Yes, that's brilliant," or "No, that's dreadful. Do it better." And you carry on doing that until the script is all gone.
It's pretty fast-paced, usually, especially if you're going out to a studio where, I mean, the Divinity, keep harping on about it, but it's just really interesting from a voice perspective because they had something like 1 million words to record. They had 4 studios going pretty much full-time. So it's, you turn up, you get a warm drink, and it's in the booth, and then go. There's not much downtime of, how was your weekend? It was all right. How was your weekend? Yeah, it was pretty good. It's go, 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 die. That's pretty much it. What
are some of the more bizarre things you've been asked to do when you're in a recording studio?
For work or just, That's an interesting one.
I don't know. My weirdest one is actually something I didn't get the job on. It was just for an audition. And I can't decide how I feel about not getting it because I had to full on fake an orgasm. I'm not sure how I feel about that looking back on it.
It wasn't even a game audition, I don't think. Can you just record an orgasm and send it? Yeah.
But that was weird. That was an odd thing to hit send on. Like, am I really sending this to somebody I don't know?
This will be on SoundCloud soon. Yeah. Half the time, a lot of it is just the bizarre characters that you have to play.
Do any stick out in your head?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, the lizard prostitute that I play in Divinity. If any of you want to have sex with me as a lizard, go and find Zarat.
I'd highly recommend it.
He's very nice. He asks if you'd like to water his flowers.
Awkwardly, this was the session where he knew I was in town, and so our sessions were back-to-back, so we were going to go out for a drink afterwards, because we kind of rarely get to see each other's actual faces.
That's true.
So I was in for the recording session. We don't usually hear other actors working in a voice booth. It's usually just you, even if it's an emotional scene like Turing Test. When we were playing opposite each other, there was screaming and shouting and arguing, and we were never in the same booth. We didn't even hear each other. But for this one, I finally got to hear him. And what was the first thing I heard? Zarat.
Hello. He's delightful. I love him so much. But yeah, there are the funny ones like that. And then, as you mentioned the Turing Test. Sometimes it's just the horrific stuff that is quite. You have to sometimes, and especially because it's voice and there's no time, you have to be very, how can I put it, emotionally agile. So it's like, so I'm doing this.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, emotionally flexible. Like, boom, 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 now I'm foraging for berries. Brilliant, life is great. Oh, now I'm tied to a rack being tortured, and this is the most horrific thing I've ever been through in my life, and I have to go to a dark place like that. That's some of the part of the challenge that I love, but just, okay, now everything is horrible. Yay!
Coming back from that is kind of interesting. Right,
Why?
After the recording session for Turing Test, I had to just take myself off for a walk in the park and remind myself that everything's fine and bad things aren't happening to me. But some of the characters are useful, though, afterwards. You kind of keep... I'm sort of the opposite of you. I don't have them existing in my head already. I create them, and then they live in the back of my head. So, like, Melody's back there ready to deal with anybody now if I get into a situation with somebody who needs to just shush.
What makes for a good video game voiceover, or maybe just a voiceover in general. But when we're playing games, you know, what can we listen out for? How do we discern between a good voiceover and a bad one?
First off, not to do with whether it's good or bad, but every game you play, anytime you hear somebody screaming and screaming and screaming, or fighting or dying, that is a voice actor in a booth going, God, my throat hurts. I've been doing this for 3 hours. Everything hurts.
I just want honey.
I applaud anybody who has ever had to do that, because it's really, really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, on that, and this is like, I wear this like a badge of honor, and I really shouldn't, but I can't say what for like another 2 weeks, but Total War Warhammer 2, which I do some vocal work in, it was only an hour's session, but the character voice that it was, when I woke up the next day, my voice was fine, but my throat was physically bruised. I could just feel from where I had to get my muscles to go for the voice, it hurt. So yes, always just a little doff your hat to any screaming you hear.
Yep.
But in general, it's acting. And you know, I always think the voice is almost surplus to requirements. Like I mean, in studios it's different because you've got to be quick, but for me, the voice almost comes at the end of the process. It's like,
and it usually does. It's usually one of the final things to go in.
So, you know, if it doesn't feel like they're reading a script, that's always the key. It has to be so natural.
Does it sound like somebody is reading this, or is it the first time they've ever thought and heard these words?
Yeah. Ignore grammar. That's usually, like, generally on the script, that's the first thing I will do, is see where the full stops and the commas are and completely ignore them. And I will repeat words, because that's how people speak. Like at the end there, my brain was catching up, so I slowed down to let the words out. If it's too perfect...
For me as well, it's breathing. And it's getting to the stage now where games have the technology to actually be able to accommodate that. And it's... I haven't actually said this out loud before, but I'm allowed to now, because I've just had the thumbs up. I'm going to be playing Scarlett in The Occupation, which is down there in the hall today. And for that, they very much wanted that kind of a very naturalistic style. So they wanted all the ums and the thoughts and the half sentences that never really get said. And for me, that's my favorite kind of acting. Doing the chickens and the dogs and the fun stuff, that's a kind of a different discipline. It's the same thing. It's all acting, but they're different flavors. And for me, the realistic, the naturalistic performances are brought to life. It's all from the breathing.
Yeah, and understanding environment is one of the big things. And I'm just thinking of this because you've just mentioned breathing, but like my log in the Zerara, if anyone goes and listens to that log, he's on a spaceship that's freezing cold. So there's and these little kind of half grunts and just, I'm so cold right now. Whereas if you took, it's like half the performance. It's like the design negative space. It's that kind of stuff. Whereas if I'd have just done that flat, like I wasn't freezing to death in space, it would have been a completely different performance.
And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but the majority of people, like I'm doing now, you don't know what you're going to say at the end of a sentence until you said it. Only baddies, usually. People who are like really, like Melody would know what she's going to say, and so she can afford to be a bit more drawled, and she knows exactly where she's going. But the majority of people don't talk like that, and the speed changes, and there are pauses and thoughts, and it's those thoughts I want to hear when I listen to a character, that they've got a brain. It's not just somebody reciting lines that tells you where you need to go next.
Yeah, some good tips there. So what I like to do when we have some experts
oh God,
where
on the stage is play a game. No, is there any advice that you give people? Because maybe some people in the audience here are thinking of doing some voice acting in game. Maybe they're just interested in voice acting in games. I hope that's why they're here. So are there any tips that you would give someone? You have covered some of these already, but is there any sage wisdom that you would like to pass on?
I'm going to try and keep this really short, because I could talk about this for hours. But focus on the acting, number one. Forget that it's voice, forget that it's games, it's acting first and foremost. And the second thing is, know the industry. That's kind of my other biggest thing, is know that, I mean, you know, I guess most people in the audience are going to be gamers, but when you can perform with a knowledge of, I know how this is going to sit in a game. Like when you play Divinity or you record Divinity, I know the kind of game it is. I know the context of where this audio is going to be used. When it's dying shouts, knowing what games it's going in and what that needs to be like to fit the game world really helps. And it means you can be quick, which studios generally like. But just know the industry inside and out. You know, make the effort to understand what's going on in the industry and focus on acting and kind of almost forget the crazy voice side of stuff, because a lot of what I get booked for is not a million miles from this. Versatility is great, and it's very handy if they want you to do 34 voices. That's great. Foster it, but focus on being able to act, number one.
Yeah. I'd say pretty much the same thing, but with a real focus on know who you are, know what your skills are. Like, get training and get somebody who will be brutally honest with you and go, that's the thing you are brilliant at. This thing, not so much, but that thing is marketable. I'd say probably 50% of the roles that I play are with some vague similarity to my natural voice. And that's saleable, and that's great. And the versatility is also fun. But know what that main selling point is. Know what you do extremely well. And I think there's a temptation, because it's games and because you could be anybody, to think, well, I've got to learn all the accents and I've got to learn to do all the things. And that versatility is useful, but it's not everything. And focus, like you said, focus on the acting. And networking-wise, just keep it cool. Don't try so hard. The majority of my networking is me just meeting somebody and going, oh, hi, you seem fun, like on Twitter or something, and then having a conversation with them about crisps. And then 6 months later, they will email me and offer me a part, and I've no idea how it happened. And
what's
that's
your
why.
favourite flavour of crisps?
Ooh.
Don't start this. I'm thinking of Quavers and Whatsits again.
Oh, don't. No, we almost had an actual physical fight over that. It's clearly Whatsits, by the way.
It's clearly Quavers.
Ah.
Well, I'd say I'd chuck some Twiglets in there.
Ooh.
Renegade. Yeah.
Put those hands together.
We're going to open it up to some questions now. So if you do have a question, I think there's a microphone just there. We go. Woo! Like a holy aura.
Wow.
Just
That's not intimidating at all.
Yeah, I know it's a bit scary, but please do come up and ask a question. Yes, hello, police officer.
For a home studio with microphones, do you have a particular microphone that you prefer?
Yes, but the mic I prefer is not necessarily the mic that you might prefer and that is good for your voice. So any audio people out there, I have a Sennheiser 416, which is a shotgun mic, which I use because it works well with the bass tones of my voice, and I can point it at different places to get different responses for character work. But if you've got a lovely, rich, warm voice, you might want a different kind of mic. So I always say, try as many mics as you can, get recordings of your voice, natural and otherwise, and see which one just works the best with your voice.
And if you can, get somebody who works as a producer to have a listen to it, because they'll hear things that you can't. I don't know. I've been quite lucky with microphones. I'm rocking a Neumann U87 at the moment, which is crazy expensive and was my dream microphone. So I've saved up for that over 30 years, like, to get to that point. But I don't think it's necessarily the right microphone for everybody. And it may still not be the right one for me. I might find another one that suits me better. There are a few places in London I think you can go to that have actual physical outlets, and they'll let you record and take recordings home with you so you can pick. So it's worth having a bit of a Google.
That's handy. That's handy.
Thank you very much. We have another question. Hello.
You're right. My name's Aynel. I'm an actor and voice artist like yourself. Thanks for the awesome tips you already gave already. And you probably already touched on this, but obviously a lot of the time with video game voiceover, you don't get the scripts in advance because of NDAs and stuff like that. Do you have any kind of tips for sight reading? So once you get in there, obviously you have your own idea of the character, but then once you're there and you've just been given the script, how do you kind of approach that?
First off, practice all the time, all day, every day. That's where, for me, because I've been doing radio commercials for so long, That really, really helped because more often than not, they're sight read. So I've been doing it every day. You've got kids, you read to children. Just practice reading as much as you can.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, if you, like, because I guess we're both voice actors for games and voiceover artists, however you differentiate it. So like corporate scripts, which I will be reading day in, day out, that's practice as well. And it's just getting the knack of letting your eyes trail 3 or 4 words ahead of what's coming out your mouth. That's the skill you need. And I cannot emphasize enough actually how critical a skill that is. Again, just something like Divinity with the sheer weight of stuff we had to get through, if you're fluffing you have to do 2 or 3 takes before you've figured out what the script is saying, they're not going to hate you, but the chances of them going, right, get Jay in, we can give him an hour and get 10 people recorded. It's a really, really key skill.
And it is quite an overpopulated market at the moment, so there kind of isn't space to learn on the job. So I'd say that's probably the most important thing to practice. Forget accents, forget anything else. Like, can you read aloud? Then move on to can you read aloud and make it sound like you're making it up as you say it.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Next question, please.
Oh, God.
Uh-oh. We let him in.
I'm an amateur voice actor. No, I'm not. Could you give people any advice, maybe on... Some people obviously don't have a work reel to show people. They haven't done anything yet and they want to become a voice actor. Can you give people any advice maybe on how to put together a really great reel? Maybe what people want to hear?
Reels are a really tricky one. And I kind of want to say the best thing I can say about getting a reel together is forget about getting a reel together and go back to the training part of it.
Yeah,
because there's almost 0 point putting a reel together until you know 2 things. And one is how to do it, and the second is what your sound even is. So I could throw down 10 characters on an animation reel, but are they the characters I'm going to get booked for? I love doing an old man voice. Am I ever going to book it? No, they're going to book an old man to do an old man voice.
Can you give us a blast of your old man voice?
Hang on, here's Gandalf, you silly fat hobbits. Something like that, which is fun, but doesn't often get booked. But yeah, it is a case of wait until you're at a point where this is the stuff you want to put in front of people. First impressions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and getting training from the right people really helps with that. Going back to what we were saying earlier about somebody who's going to be brutally honest with you. The one thing that I see people doing is asking their friends or other voice actors. I can only give advice from my personal journey, if you want to call it that. But that may be completely different to the best thing for somebody else to do. And a trainer, rather than another actor, will be the best person to advise on that. They'll be able to put you on the right path for what your voice is best for. And while it's lovely to get approval from our peers and get support, and there's huge amounts of space for that, getting training from somebody who really knows what they're talking about and is currently working in the industry and has contacts that they will put you forward to.
Are those trainers hard to find? Are they a typical kind of dramatic trainers, or is it a separate?
They are hard to find. Yes.
The good ones are hard to find, but yeah, definitely voice-specific coaching. General acting training is great, but voice-specific because it's its own individual skill set.
I'd say both, actually, because they're the 2 skills meld with each other. So I would say particularly screen training. There aren't many places in this country that do specific screen training, but...
Are there any places you can recommend?
Places.
Or people?
If you can get her, Mel Churcher is fantastic. I trained with her, and she has... Google her, she's insanely good. She's also insanely busy, so I'm not sure. I'll think about it. If anybody's interested, tweet me, and I'll go through my mental Rolodex when my brain's working.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your question. Next question, please. I feel like a game show host.
Okay, so what makes a good script?
Oh.
Ooh, this could be an interesting one.
Thinking.
Thinking, yeah.
Well, yes, the writer. If the writer has learnt to think like the character, rather than seeing the character as a way to impart information.
Yes.
If that makes sense, does it?
They need to be like people that are alive. It's like the worst thing is when you have that script, and this is quite often why like protagonist roles can be a bit boring because they are the ones that sometimes have to impart the "no, I really think we should check this room once more" kind of line, which is awful because who walks into a room and says that? But realistic writing, you know, where you could take it out of a game and it would still work, and almost more than that, dare I say it, what sometimes makes good writing is flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a team effort, and I know that sounds really but it really is. When you get into a studio, it's a real mix of the writer, the director, and what the voice talent brings to the table. So, I mean, in Elite, funnily enough, you know, the director there is fantastic, and we had the autonomy for me to go, that line just, I don't feel like the character would say it like this. I just want to swap these two words around or phrase it slightly differently, and just being open to that really goes a long way as well.
Yeah. And that's what I've enjoyed working with the guys at White Paper on The Occupation, that it's been very much a collaborative process. Like, if you're a developer and you have the option to get actors involved earlier in the process rather than later, that's going to be invaluable. Like, you will get a much better performance because then you can work together as a team rather than, no, we've already done the language translation and it has to be this exact phrasing, because it does happen. Yeah, just being able to not be too precious, I guess, about the exact wording, as long as the gist is right. Finding a way that character will naturally say something. So basically, strong characterization, be flexible.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more, two more. Okay.
We'll talk
rattle
less.
through them.
Hi guys, thanks for the tips you've already given, been fantastic today. You mentioned before that the synergy between, you know, specific, sorry, I'm not wording myself very well at all.
It's all right, there's no script.
Exactly, this is how people really talk, right? So, like, the acting and the voice is as one, like the characterization process is that same. Is there anything specifically about, like, in terms of skill set or prep or anything like that, that you would say is a main differentiator from, say, for example, a stage or a film actor to a voiceover actor? Because I've got a lot of experience in stage, but not so much in voice.
The main thing that I have heard from producers that is the difference is that when you take a voiceover onto the stage, you're giving them something. You know, I've been stock still in a voice booth for 30 years. If you put me on a stage, suddenly you're giving me loads of things to play with. Whereas if you take most actors and put them in a booth, they don't have their costume or their props or their physicality or other people to talk to. You've taken all their toys away and they freak out. And you end up with this quite stilted, stereotypical read. So I would say practice creating the entire world as if it were on a stage or on screen. Create that in your head, make these people real. You are talking to them. And practice from there.
Okay.
And I think the only thing I would add to that is, if you're on stage or screen, generally it's a relatively linear story. It's like it's scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. Great, I know my character progression. In voice, and you know what I said earlier about, picking berries, the world is lovely. Oh my God, I'm being tortured. It is literally that. So this idea of just emotionally flexible A to B at the click of a hat is really, really valuable.
Just a quick one. No, it's very cheeky. Who were your main, like, inspirations or people in the industry that you think are particularly good? Or
Ashley Birch, Frida Wolf. Oh, this is scary. You go.
I'll go. Well, let's be obvious. Troy Baker,
Yep.
Nolan North, Mel Blanc. That's going back years, but just for his sheer characterization.
Claudia Black.
Yeah.
Anybody who does the screamy thing in LA, because they work so hard.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, last question. Hello.
Hi, I'm currently studying acting for screen and recorded media. I'm in my 3rd year now, so I'll be going into the big wide world soon. Is there any sort of tips that you could recommend for anyone that is going to make that transition into the sort of professional industry? Like, what's your first step?
Have money in the bank.
Yeah, money's nice. What I would say, and this is a general thing as much as transitioning, is is respect the profession. I think a lot of it, or respect that it's a business and it's an industry. Half the job, dare I say, is, I'm sure this is a word I can say on Twitch, is turn up on time and don't be a dick. That will book you a lot more work than, my God, he can do 1,000 voices. It's about understanding it is a job, it is a career, turn up on time, and really approach it in everything you do, even if it's social media where you can all be too chummy and, you know, tweet cat pictures, which is fine, actually. But it's your job, always approach it with the nth degree of professionalism.
And I'd say, understand your brand. So many actors, especially in this country, are so terrified of being pigeonholed into a certain type of role. And I would much rather be the first person somebody thinks of when they want, like, an undead, awful woman with dubious morality than the 25th person that they thought of as nice girl next door. That's my casting type. I play undead women and scary, scary human beings.
Sean Bean in space, everyone.
Exactly. So, like, be comfortable with what it is that makes you unique and what you can use to sell yourself in that industry, and just go down that. All the other stuff, you'll get versatility later on, but be really excellent at one thing and then diversify.
Yeah, just very, very quickly on the end of that is exactly that. Everybody, it's no good going, what's going to sell me is, hey, I can drop into American and be a gruff American guy. There are 500,000 other people who can do every single voice that I can do. The only thing that makes me buyable or me sellable, whichever way you want to put it, is the way in which I will deliver my American gruff voice. That's what you need to focus on, and that's about knowing who you are as a performer and how you deliver stuff.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
No worries, good luck.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to this session. This is the last streamed session of today, but coming up next, we have a whole bloody orchestra on the stage. So do come and see it if, you guys here in the audience. But otherwise, all that's left to say is a massive thank you to Jay Britton and Amelia Tyler for some wonderful insights and some wonderful advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Aww.